Hey guys, how you doing? Can everybody hear me okay? I have no idea what I'm doing. I just want to tell you guys that right off the bat. I am absolutely new to streaming. Just let me know in the chat if you can hear anything okay. Awesome. All right, cool. There's a lot of chats going on. I'm trying to read through them here. I got to remember, I got to look in the camera. I'm terrible at this. I can't I got to remember to do that. This is live streaming 101. All right, give me one sec here. Let's let some people come in. We can all hang out. There's a lot of people saying hi to everybody. Oh my God, so many people. It's going so fast. Oh, we got some questions already. I'm going to get to some questions. There's a lot of questions I'm sure people have. We'll do like a little question section. I want to first um, go through some just artwork stuff from the Devil's Rock. We can go through some of that. We can take a look at some behind the scenes stuff. We'll do some questions, talk about some of the story stuff, and maybe look at like how some of this stuff is made, like how I technically animate stuff like that. Oh, we got some nice chats in here. Hi, everybody. All right, we'll give it another minute, just letting people come in. I hope nobody has any high hopes for this stream. This is just a casual hangout stream. It's not going to blow your mind. We're just going to sit around, draw, chat about some stuff, you know. We got tips on how to animate. Question from Asterix Productions. We'll get to some of that stuff later. Were the creatures in the Devil's Rock an inspiration of something? Yeah, there's a bunch of inspirations. We'll talk through all that stuff. Oh, and I see there's some Hilda questions too. So I guess for people who don't know, yeah, I am Andy, and I made Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark, but also I was a director and supervising producer on a TV show called Hilda that is on Netflix, which a lot of people um, seem to have picked up on. I don't know. So just in case you didn't know. All right, cool. We got a bunch of people in. People are saying, when should we ask questions? Later on. I'll answer some questions later on. The chat's moving like really fast right now, so it'd be kind of hard for me to maybe go back and find them later. So just make sure you put them in later when we're doing through some questions and stuff. Give me one sec. I'm gonna open up some files for you guys because I want to show you guys a couple of little things, just little bits that I thought would be interesting to start out. Mostly, I want to talk about the Devil's Rock because that's the most fresh in my mind. But then I was also going to go through some of the werewolf short that I did. I think my stepdad's a werewolf, just to show some behind the scenes of how that's made because it's like a simpler thing that is easy to break down. So we'll start with some Devil's Rock artwork. Just give me one sec here. What we got? Oh, from Germany. Forestia. I don't know how you say it, but thanks for coming in. 2 a.m. Oh my God. Hell yeah. All right. I like to use Adobe Bridge a lot of times to just go through my files because I find it super easy and intuitive to do stuff in it. Show you some drawings. Anywho. Oh wait, I should probably let's do this. That's a lot better. All right, there you go. Now my head, my big fat head is blocking poor Laura. Let me just like, I don't know. There's not really a great place to put me here. Logan's feet. No one needs to see those. All right. So here, just showing you guys a little peek of like some of the design work. You know what? I don't need my head in this entire thing at all. Let's just do this. There we go. That's better. So here we have our cast of characters. This was like the initial design that I had done for the main characters in the Devil's Rock. Haley, Logan, the cop, who his name is never said on screen, but I guess Haley and Logan's names are never said either on screen for that matter, but they're listed in the description. So, but the cop's name is actually JL Valentine, which is a homage to a couple different things, which we'll go through when we get to him. And then Laura, our poor sweet Laura, who lasted about 30 seconds on screen. So this was like the first thing that I had done, just to line them all up and sort of, you know, figure out size relationships, figure out their costuming and general look. And then I had to like rotate all of them because everyone needed to know what these characters looked like from all these different angles. So this is Haley's model sheet rotation, which I made like a terrible mistake in that I did not fully rotate her. I did like a 5-point rotation. So you can see here, there's like sort of a back, a 3/4 back, a profile, a 3/4 front, and a front. And the issue with Haley is that her hair is not symmetrical. And so when she turns her head to the other side, it became like a big question mark of like, what does that look like? And so I was constantly trying to figure that out through the whole thing with the animators that worked on it with me. And we only noticed it once we started trying to do it. And we were like, oh, wait, we probably really should have figured this out before we started actually drawing scenes. It was crazy. There's some other little supplemental things I had done for Haley, like just some like extreme mouth stuff too. Just trying to figure out like how her mouth moves, so that we could build that into the animation. And also like little things like the blood sort of coming down her face once she, spoilers, smashes the car into the rock. Why is she staring into my soul, says Raffi. Well, because she needs to. I don't know why. She's an intense girl, you know? She's been through a lot. This is a pretty high stakes story, guys. Super high. I don't know where to look. I'm like looking at the wrong screen. I'm looking at this one. I'm terrible at this stuff, guys. This is embarrassing. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Haley. Okay. So one of the main things, obviously, I needed to have her like backpack on because that was a big part of like she is keeping that really close to her. She's not letting it out of her sight. It's sort of part of her, and that sort of eventually gets revealed to be because she's holding all the money in this pack that she took from robbing the Q Mart in Hamlin. And Tofu says, "Why did you do Laura so dirty?" I know. Look, I love Laura more than anybody, and so it hurts my soul that she lasted 30 seconds. But she made a huge impact while she was on screen. And in fact, I'd say she is like the most favorite design that I did for this whole thing. She's so cool. Um, One thing to note about Hallie too is her jacket was something intentional. I don't know that I'm like super happy with how I designed this stuff. Like, um, I feel like I maybe needed to have another pass. I was really just like going fast with it and trying to make it work. I was kind of inspired by a couple different things. There was this singer named Lynx, who I had seen some of her videos, and she just has like some like this cool persona character that I felt sort of matched what I was trying to do with Haley. I keep saying Hallie because originally I had her named Hallie in the first version of the script. So I gotta get used to Haley. And then this jacket here was supposed to be like a military jacket. And the story behind the jacket was that it was her dad's, who was a soldier and was deployed overseas and was ultimately killed in action when she was fairly young. And it's something that she keeps with her as like a part of him. It makes her feel safe, so she kind of like wraps around her, and it's like a little bit too big, and it kind of like it's just a little detail that I wanted to include. I don't think I nailed it. Like, it's not super clear, and I think it ultimately is too stylized and too I don't know, simplified. It needs to be cooler. But I didn't have a lot of time, so I was just kind of like rolling with what I felt initially. Um, Her style is kind of, she's super sporty. I wanted to sort of infuse that idea of her running, like she was a runner. This was something that she did. It made her feel good. When she runs, it makes her feel like, you know, it clears her head. It just feels like, one foot in front of the other is just the simplest thing you can do. Um, that's such a cool like idea. And then I guess another inspiration too was her voice actor was Tanea Taylor, who I had heard on the radio here where I live. And I was driving home one night and I heard her come on the radio. She's like a host of like a local radio program here. And her voice, I felt like, that'd be a really cool uh, sort of texture for Haley. It feels like Haley. There's something about it. I could use that as like a reference point to try and find someone who could do her voice. Because I knew obviously like previous to this, it was just me doing all the voices, which is another thing a lot of people kind of get surprised by when they're like, "Oh wait, that was you." When I sort of go like, "Sparrow Moon was not at all what I thought she would be," and people go like, "Oh, that was you." That like doesn't sound like my necessarily my normal speaking voice, but that's Dr. Merrick, Dr. Jacob Merrick from The Worm. Um, but so obviously this story, I was like, I as an actor, I think I'm fine, but obviously I have like limited range, right? I'm not gonna be able to pull off a 17-year-old girl, no matter how hard I try. It's just not gonna work. So I knew I had to find somebody. And I had heard this girl on the radio, and I thought, oh man, she sounds so cool. There's just something about her voice that feels familiar and right. And then I just sort of got the idea, like, oh, why don't I just reach out to her? Why don't I just go on Instagram and like send her a message, say, hey, would you ever want to do something like this? Does this seem cool to you? And she was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. Let's do it. So then luckily I just had Tanae do it. And you guys can go to her Instagram. I should put her Instagram in the chat if you guys want to go. I don't know. Do you guys one sec? Let me pull this up. There we go. putting her Instagram in there. So Tanae did just an awesome job with this, especially the screaming. I don't know. Do you guys think the screaming worked? I loved her screams. That was so fun. Freaking crazy, dude. So anyway, we go to Laura. Laura was voiced by my friend Kathleen. Um, and she had her the extent of her lines were like running Walla and then some screaming and then I think we might at her death scene. So it was great. Kathleen did an amazing job. Obviously Laura is like a little more modern than Haley. She's like more of a modern teen girl. I wanted to sort of reflect the fact that maybe she was a little more well off. Haley is a little um, like retro hand me down, and Laura's a little cooler than she is. Um, Melissa Zhu, who worked on this with me, she did some storyboard stuff on the Devil's Rock and a little bit on the Worm too. I think she always makes fun of me because I have no fashion sense. So this was she approved of this design. She felt like this was just felt real. This felt good. So at least I got one past where she didn't think it was hilariously inept. Um, so she's kind of like the backstory for Laura is she's a Mi'kmaq, um, came from a family out on the East Coast and was sent to this camp um, called Turnaround Point, where her and Hallie met and escaped, um, which is another story that I want to tell at some point. The Turnaround Point. So I don't want to give too much away, too many spoilers for that. But I love Laura's design. I think she's maybe the coolest one that I made. I like her big freaking pants and her draped shirt and her purple hair and her cool piercings and all that stuff. So let's go, Logan. Logan, the nice, sort of easygoing farm boy, the innocent little poor Logan. He obviously is sort of a in a sense he's a hero of the story, I guess. He's kind of a damsel in distress too, but I mean he has his moments. There's not much to say about Logan. I mean he's kind of cool. I wanted to make sure he felt rural and sort of he's in good shape. You know, he grew up on a farm, so he's has to be physically active. Oh, the creatures. I don't want to skip over. Where do we go here? Let's find Val. There we go. So, Officer J.L. Valentine just finishing his shift. Um, he unfortunately decided to stop off and take a quick peek at this strange car that was left out on the side of the back road. But his name is J.L. Valentine, which is a reference to Valentine is a reference to the character in the Tremors, which is part of like the inspiration for where I got the idea here. Like the idea for the story sort of came from um I used to take these trips up north at Thanksgiving with my dad's family. And so we'd go to this place called Port Loring, and it's a long drive to get up there, like a 6 hour drive, 7 hour drive. And so when you're driving up there, it's like it's rural. It's like super desolate. And so you're going for hours and seeing nothing but these like fields. And in these like crop fields, you would just see in the middle of the field a big tree or a big rock or something just sitting there in the middle. You'd be like, what the heck is that? And I started thinking like, oh man, why is that? Why do people just leave that? I know there's a reason. I think someone told me that was like, oh, they do it to like anchor the soil or something. But whatever. That doesn't matter. I I came up with a cool idea for why it could be. Maybe a meteor fell in that field, and and then I took that idea and started fleshing out this story idea. And then obviously, if you've watched Tremors, there's like a scene in Tremors where the characters are kind of stuck on this rock because the Tremors are like these underground creatures that kind of move around. And I thought, oh, that's such a cool concept that you could build out to a bigger sort of idea. So I took some inspiration from that and then combined it with this idea of a, a strange giant boulder in the middle of a cornfield and started piecing it together, you know? Yeah, I mean, when it's a long car drive, Forrest says, I actually hate car drives, but I love places like that. Like, the one cool thing is, like, when you're in the car, there's not much else to do but think about stuff and to come up with cool story ideas. So it's a great time to actually flesh out cool ideas because you got 6 hours with nothing but road in front of you. So Elisa says, Andy, have you ever watched Gravity Falls? Yeah, I watched a little bit of Gravity Falls back when it was on TV many, many years ago. It's a really cool show. It's freaking awesome. Dinah Dudes Plays says, not gonna lie, I want to try to work at Mercury after college. Try, man. It'd be super cool. We're always looking for animators and passionate people who love making animation because it's a tough thing. It's a tough business to be in, but if you love it, you can make some cool stuff. Is it bad that you hated the Hilda episode, The Forgotten Lake? Says Calvillo. Yeah, it's bad. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone has their own tastes, Everyone likes what they like and doesn't like what they don't like. It's definitely my one of my favorite episodes of the show, but you don't have to like it. It's cool. So before I don't know, I gotta finish this. I forgot what I was doing. Let's talk about JL. What else do we got about JL? Oh yeah, the other part of his name. The other part of JL's name was JL, which is short for Jean Luc, which is after Jean Luc Savoy, who worked on the Worm with me a little bit. He did a lot of stuff on the Worm. Like he was sort of my right hand man when we were making the Worm, sort of helping like guide the animators and stuff. Because when I was making the Worm, I was also making Hilda, and it was just a lot of stuff all at once. So, I wanted to make sure, and JL didn't work on the Devil's Rock, but I wanted to make sure he was honored in the history of Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark. I guess we talk about the creatures. You want to talk about the creatures? Let's do that. Let me open this in Photoshop, actually. One sec, we can break down some. It's opening. Nomster says, do you plan on making any continuations for these stories? Like, I was really intrigued by all the amazing world building in the Worm. Yeah, I would love to make continuations. Specifically, I wrote a continuation of the Pine Creepers, but obviously all the stories are smaller snippets of larger ideas. But obviously the nature of YouTube and the limitations of what I can do outside of the sort of big machine of show business is that I have to sort of pare them down to like very basic things and only tell, really small pieces of these stories to be able to execute them at least in some way that's satisfying. So all of them feel like they could do so much more, but I don't know if I will because I don't want to say I'd never do a sequel story. I definitely want to, but it's like you're sitting there thinking, I could do a sequel story, or I could do a new story that I feel like is something I really want to tell that I wouldn't get to otherwise if I don't um, just do it, you know? Because horror animation is a hard sell, I think, for a lot of people. Maybe not so much now. I think people are starting to come around, but it's hard to pitch like an idea like this to say like, we're gonna make drop dead serious horror. It's not like comedy, which a lot of people kind of go, what do you mean? It's not Scooby Doo, so I think people have a hard time imagining what that could be. At least in like a big part of the TV business anyway. Maybe that's not the case in a lot of other places, but you know. I like that it's changing now though, because you see all kinds of cool stuff coming out that's a little bit different in the last few years. So I think people are starting to understand that you really could tell all kinds of stories in animation. Um, okay, so I have that open. Let's go. Wait, there we go. So I don't know. Let's see if you guys want to see something. Let me go to like this. Let me turn down the darkening because I wanted them to be veiled in shadow a lot of times, and hard to see. So if I do that and I kind of like you can get a good look at like what these creatures actually look like. Oops. There's a lot of like. Oh, and this is one cool detail a lot of people didn't maybe necessarily pick up on in the thing. But there's like on the backs of the alpha creature, there is like, or the queen or whatever you want to call it. I didn't really come up with a name for it, but there's a sort of clutch of eggs all kind of like clinging to this backside. And that's what is being embedded into the victims of the creatures. Orion August says, "What exactly are they, Andy?" And that's so. Before I get into like what exactly they are, I want to talk about something with you guys about. I really believe in the death of the author. Do you guys know what that is? Does everybody know what the death of the author is? Just Google it. Let me see here. One sec. So the AI overview, great. Death of the author is a literary theory primarily associated with Roland Barthes, who argues that the author's intentions and biography are irrelevant to the interpretation of a text. It basically just means it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I meant. It doesn't matter what I wrote. Really, what matters is your interpretation of it. You have just as valid of an idea of what exactly they are as I do. Even though I did intend something very specific with it. If you have a different idea, I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. You guys should like, if you disagree with me, you think I'd be cooler if it was something else, believe that. That's awesome. Just do it. But that being said, they are mutated cicadas. They are cicadas that were changed by the properties of the rock that has permeated the land that surrounds it. It's the same reason why the corn there grows and grows and grows, and it's fast and strong. Um, and the the idea really came from like at first I was trying to come up with obviously like thematically what kind of a creature would be a workable idea for a story set in a cornfield. And at first, I was kind of toying with this idea of a crow monster. because I really love the idea of crows. I think they're really fascinating. And I had drawn this drawing of this sort of quadrupedal crow. There's so many cool things about crows that I got to use this monster at some point in the future, but they can like mimic people's voices. They can like speak. They there's like hyper intelligent. Um the other thing is there's this maybe it's not crows, but like the owls do this where like they have these like pellets basically that they leave after they've eaten something. They eat and then they excrete just like the stuff that they don't digest, so like bones or like things. And I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if you found like a really big pellet and like if it was opened up, there was like a kid's shoe in it or something. That would be wild. Um, but ultimately, I was talking with my buddy Shane, who also worked on the Devil's Rock with me. Um, and trying to bounce around ideas, saying like, dude, what should I do with this story? I need something. And he had a list of things like barn cats and like just crazy things like that. And then one of them was locusts because it was like this very interesting sort of idea that they devour sort of whole crops. And then I thought, oh yeah, like cicadas, like locusts. And um, when I started thinking about cicadas, I started thinking about the idea that like there's this one brood of cicadas that hibernates for so long. Like their whole life cycle is basically um they emerge when like for like a very brief period of time they swarm. And these things they just mate and then die in the matter of like a couple weeks, right? And then their eggs, their larvae, burrow down deep into the ground and they remain there and they mature over a period of 17 years. And then 17 years later, they'll all emerge out of the earth and they'll start swarming and again, like just feeding and mating. And it's just like, it was such a fascinating idea that also kind of tied into some of the ideas of like thematically what I was doing with the characters. This idea of 17 years in humans is such like a powerful milestone for people that like that's sort of a big moment where you become sort of an adult. You're on the cusp of coming of age and that metamorphosis that happens to us as people when we have to become, you know, who we are. That I felt like that was such an interesting duality between the monsters and humans that I felt like that couldn't pass up that opportunity. And then also there was this cool, let me see, there's this cool image that I was struck by too. Let me see here one sec. Um, you just look up cicadas. Do. Come on, give me a good image here. I mean, I'll just get cicada head. Yeah, okay, cool. So if you take a look at this, oh, my big fat head's in the way again. There we go. So there's this like sort of weird pattern that they have on their heads that to me looked like a face when I looked at it. I thought there was this sort of pareidolia thing going on that was this opportunity to really sort of explore that in a more stark and striking way. Um, so I felt like that would be really cool to sort of evolve into something a little creepier, more just like this face of death. You know, these little I guess they're called like ocular. I don't know what they're called. These little they're like eyes basically, extra eyes. Um, so that was kind of like part of the inspiration of that, and I felt like it was. I always like to keep things really close to the vest too when it comes to like showing the creatures. Also because they're super hard to draw. They're like very complex, a lot of line mileage, and mechanically very difficult. So I don't want to show them as much as possible because they're just really hard. So so yeah, I was kind of like there's a lot of inspirations that kind of went into that. I was obviously when you're thinking about monster bugs, Starship Troopers is super cool. That's something you can't avoid. So I'm kind of influenced a little bit by how like the cool bugs worked in Starship Troopers. Um, yeah, I guess if you guys want, we can just do some questions. I should see if I can find some questions here. I have like obviously there's been a lot of chats. I have to kind of I can look back through some, but if you guys want to put them in the chat here, anything you want, I'll start doing some questions. Maybe we can do some like most frequently asked questions that we could talk about that I can seem to get over and over again. So we have Cal is still on this Hilda Spider Frog episode. Hilda is a forgiving soul. She's a gentle, caring person, and she sees the change in the spider frog. Okay, Mimic had giant insects that evolved to hunt humans, and yeah, that's a I love that movie. I hadn't thought about that, but that's like such a cool movie. Tamil says, watching from India. Nice. Gabby says, is there even a chance for anthology show? Well, that's what I'm trying to. I would love to make like an actual show and adapt it for Don't Want Come Alone After Dark. I am talking to some people about trying to get that going, but it's super hard um, to get original shows made right now. Uh, Everyone wants existing IPs, and you know, if you don't own Spider-Man or you know Star Wars, it's kind of tough to break into stuff like that. So, but luckily, I think like my whole idea was okay. Well, I don't really want to ask for permission to be able to make something like this. I just want to make it, and so I had to sort of make it in a sort of more limited form. But I love making these YouTube videos, and it's so fun. How is it working with Ryan? It's awesome. Ryan's the best. Ryan Carlson does all the music for everything Don't Will Come Alone After Dark, which the man is like a genius. He's amazing. I I love working with Ryan so much, and um, you know I gotta have him on. I was gonna have Shane come on to this stream and we could just hang out and talk about some stuff, but he was busy today. But I should ask Ryan to come on too. Maybe next time I'll have Ryan come on and he can show you guys some of the cool like contraptions that he's made to make sounds, weird, cool, ambient sounds for the Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark music. How do you make your drawings look so creepy with such a cartoony style? It's hard, actually. And also I think if you watch the videos, you kind of see it evolve a little bit. I'm still trying to like find the right language, like the right balance of stuff. In the Pine Creepers, I wasn't thinking at all. I literally was. I was really. I was working a lot and I was tired, and I just wanted something that I could do as an outlet. And I wasn't like trying to do anything with it. I was just drawing, and I had written this short story, and I just thought, oh, that'd be cool to draw. And I just started doing it, and so I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. I was just naturally doing it. Um, and so after when it came out and then everybody loved it and it got all this attention, I was like, oh no, I probably should have thought about that a little bit more, you know? I probably should have been a little more intentional about what I was doing. But so then the worm, I kind of refined a little bit, like the ideas of the art to try and work as more of a tonally straight thing that maybe people who didn't weren't so into animation might be able to buy. And then I refined it a little bit more with the Devil's Rock, trying to find just sort of like the balance of realism and style. That's like the hardest thing because you don't want it to be real. That's boring. That's stupid. What you want is for it to look stylish, but also not be goofy and kind of like comedic. So it's hard to find that balance. I don't know if I've necessarily hit it exactly yet. But I'm still working it out, you know. Kiwi says hi. Hi, Kiwi. Kiwi Sophia. How you doing? Uh, long name says, did Sparrow kill the other kids? Okay, here's the thing. Remember, death of the author. So if you don't like my intention with this, feel free to imagine your own. But the answer to that question is yes. I think vaguely, or they're more accurately, they agreed to a pact. The only people who knew about the worm were there, and they knew if they all died, they could kill the worm. And unfortunately, Dr. Merrick screwed this whole thing up, but there was an attempt made. Um, and poor Sparrow, unfortunately, was left behind. What do you recommend for a one-man team looking to animate stories, working on some for our podcast? That's a hard question. Back away slowly. That's that question. I don't know. The Pine Creepers was pretty much just a one-man team. Although I did, Shane was the first person to ever touch anything Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark besides me. And he did a couple of like shots of just movement on the Pine Creepers. Um, and then Ryan obviously did like the music and stuff. But it if you're talking about store like software and stuff, I think I would suggest Adobe Animate as a really simple, easy way to animate things. You can also use Photoshop. You can animate in Photoshop. A lot of people don't know that. And at the studio that I work at, Mercury Filmworks, they like to use Toon Boom Harmony, but it's very complex. Harmony is really, it's not easy to use, right? It is technical. So I think for a one man team, it's not necessary. A lot of the benefits of Harmony are like really big integration at scale with large teams, which doesn't matter if you're one guy or girl. You're just, you know, you can work on your own. So I would say use Adobe Animate, and you just have to make, you know, engineer an art direction and a style that is conducive to the tools that you have. Long name also says turtle. I assume that means I'm going slow. Oh no, I fell so far behind. Okay, hold on. I gotta go do some more questions. I'm sorry. Guys, I'm trying here. I'm trying. Okay, I'm gonna have to just pick up at some point. They just booted me down to the bottom of the chat. Um, okay. Anyway, where were we? Did you make rigs or do frame by frame animation? I do both. I don't really generally ever do rigs, but a lot of the people that I work with really like doing rigs. So on the Devil's Rock, we used rigs, and then we did some frame by frame animation. On something like the, you know, Don't Look Up, the little spider short, or I think My Stepdad's a Werewolf. That's like frame by frame animation. Um, and a lot of all the Pine Creepers was frame by frame animation, except for maybe the one shot Shane did, where he used a rig. I don't. Yeah, I have to have him on. I have to talk to him about it. What was the hardest moment to animate? Man, the hardest thing, honestly, there was the shot of the cop walking into the corn was a giant pain to make look right. It just didn't work. It was a huge problem. And I waited till the very, very end to redo it and try and like make it work. And it just, I did it over and I really hated the version that I did. And I went, oh no, what have I done? I spent like a day on this shot and it looked really bad. And I thought, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. So then at the very end, the last thing I did was go back and reanimate that shot, and it is fine. It's not even a really good shot necessarily. It's fine. It's cool. It works, but you wouldn't think that would be the hardest thing to do, but it just, I don't know, it just wasn't coming together. What are my other horror inspirations? Says Nomster. Mm, I think obviously Stephen King is like a big inspiration on me. Um, and early Spielberg, back when he was interested in doing horror. Um, I love Neil Marshall, who made a movie called Dog Soldiers and a movie called The Descent, which is freaking such a killer movie. Hit a few of these real quick. Um, could you do like a dinosaur pterosaur inspired episode? I don't know, maybe that'd be kind of cool. When will you wear wigs? I don't know. What was the inspiration for the channel name? It was just an interesting phrase that it's sort of like evocative of sort of coming of age horror. Um, that old sort of rule from your parents: don't walk home alone after dark. Something foreboding about it. Um, I don't know. It kind of sounded cool, and it wasn't taken, so you know it's 2025. Pretty much everything's been done. So, um, will there be more shorts? I want to do a couple more. I have a couple more ideas that I use the shorts a lot of times to like experiment with different techniques and style things. So I want to do a few more soon. I need to know if it's going to turn into its own full show. I hope so. Maybe someday. Would you consider doing Don't Come Alone After Dark stories in different mediums like comics or prose? Yeah, I would. I mean, they were written as short stories first, before anything else. So maybe someday I'll just put all the short stories out. I have like a whole bunch of them written. What was the settings you had in mind before you decided to go with a cornfield? It was pretty much always, it wasn't just like corn, but it was always a field of a crop, like a sea of crop. And in the middle of it was this rock. Um, and so I think ultimately, after the fact, I probably shouldn't have done corn because in my head that was such a cool idea. It was a corn. It's obviously it's a little like done, but it's done for a reason. It's there's something evocative about the shapes, the aggressive sort of like jagged forms of the leaves and the tangled mess of all this stuff. It's so striking and interesting looking. And so I went with corn, and oh my god, drawing that stuff was insane, guys, insane. So, um, what software do you use for the animation? A whole bunch of different softwares. I'll talk about that later, I guess. Um, Why didn't Grandma remember the year? She would have heard, experienced the stories. Grandma remembered. She knew what she was doing. I think Grandma went there to finish some business. And unfortunately, the creatures got the better of her. This is an exceptionally warm and wet year. Timing was a little off. Are the different episodes in the same world? Says no knee. Sorry. Um, yeah, they're all in the same world. It's a connected world. This is a specific sort of like um, continuity. They're all connected. And you'll notice, like, if you look closely at Dr. Merrick's desk in The Worm, you can see the form on his desk. That the social worker for Sparrow's case is a guy named August R. McLean, who is was once known as Augie, and he's the little kid from the Pine Creepers who was there that night with the narrator and Jordy. Would you ever do anything with cryptids like Bigfoot, or Jersey Devil? I would like to. They're kind of cool, right? They're super fun. I don't know. If, a lot of times, like the story, the monsters in the story, or the antagonist or whatever, is kind of shaped by the themes that I'm exploring. So it kind of has to connect properly with, I have to have a good story that could tell that would work from like a character perspective, but I would definitely do that. How has AI thrown a wrench in the industry so far? I don't know yet. I mean, it's kind of new. AI is kind of terrible. So like it's hard to tell yet what it's going to do, but it's definitely it's definitely messed up the internet, a lot. Um, did I draw the crow creature? Yes, I did. What does it look like? I'm not going to show you yet because I want to use it at some point. Um, is more fan art welcome? Yes, absolutely. I love watching like fan art videos and images, and I would love it if people even wanted to like, continue the stories or make little side stories. Yeah, I think that's so cool. What happened to the place where the cicadas died to the fire? It burned. I'm gonna skip. I gotta skip down to the bottom, guys. I'm got so many of these freaking chats here. Let's see. What was happening in the Don't Look Up short? It's purely for good luck. Oh, the turtle is purely for good luck. Okay, I got it. I got it. What was happening in the Don't Look Up short? All these little spiders are raining down, which is it was inspired by this time. I was going to bed one night and I got into bed and I turned out the lights and I turned on the TV. I was gonna watch something and I could see in the glow of the TV there was like this little dust particle, sort of like coming down, and I was like, oh, weird. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, jeez, that's weird. Then another one, and I was like, oh man, it's freaking dusty in here. What happened? What's going on? And then I got up and I started looking, and I was like, oh, it's all over the place. What is happening? And I looked at the TV, and on the TV screen was all these little spiders like crawling all over the screen, and you could see like their black little dots relieved against the glow of the screen. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh no, these aren't dust particles. These are spiders, and they are floating everywhere in my room. And it was because a spider had gotten in to the room and had laid eggs, and they had hatched, and these thousands and thousands of babies came out. So I got up in a crazy state of mania and got a vacuum cleaner and started sucking them all up. It was horrifying. It still traumatized me, but that was the inspiration for Don't Look Up. Are you doing this full time? What do you do for work if not? No, I am not doing this full time. This is just a side project that I do. I am a director and a producer for TV animation full time, and I work at Mercury Filmworks, which is also the studio that helped me make Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark, or parts of it at least. Anyway, and they make all kinds of really cool show, and it's just a group of very talented artists that love trying to push the boundaries of animation, what we can do with different forms of animation. And I love my job, so it's kind of, I don't know, I would love to make Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark full time, but like if I did that, I wouldn't be able to do anything else full time, which would be fine. It would be cool, and maybe someday that would happen. I don't know, but it's I just love making all of it, so it's hard to choose. um, do you plan on making other socials like Instagram, TikTok? I made an Instagram. I don't really know anything about social media, guys. Like I am just like I like to make stories and cartoons. That's what I'm good at. I don't know anything about how to, you know, deal with this social media stuff. So I made an Instagram. I post there every once in a while. I'll go post the model sheet stuff that I showed you guys on there. I made a TikTok and I put like the shorts on there. And then like people were stealing my videos and stuff. And there's this one guy that posted the whole thing of the Devil's Rock on TikTok. And I was like, man, it's got probably more views than the YouTube video. Like that's kind of, I don't know. That's not, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's like, whatever. What are you gonna do? It's the internet, I guess. I don't really know how any of it works. Were there other inspirations for the creatures besides cicadas, like the Klendathu from Starship Troopers or Quiet Place's Death Angels? Yeah, the Starship Troopers Klendathu. Those arachnids? Definitely, man. Um, Ernesty says my sister saw the short and she has a spider phobia. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, Zero, the auditor prays his message will be heard. Well, it already was. Way to go. You did it. Uh, are the cicadas scared of the light, or is it just a strategy to get more people to enter the corn? They're not scared of the light. It's that is their whole world. They were born in this cornfield and they will die in this cornfield. They don't even comprehend that there is a world outside of the cornfield. It's kind of a metaphor, is what I'm trying to do. It's about your limitations as a person, and that the only way to make change in your life is to see beyond your limited world and do something different. I think that was obviously not super subtle in the storytelling, but I didn't want to like over explain it either. So I think it may have gone over some people's heads, but that was a intentional sort of duality that I was playing. Um, this is their world. They don't want to leave. This is their territory. And it's, they would be vulnerable outside of the corn. This is their natural habitat. Um, let's see. Let's see. Jen Gee or G, I don't know. Jen Gee says, "Hey, I just walked away from the modeling life and I went back to illustrating comics. Love your work. Your work has been such a joy to experience and inspire." That's a really nice thing to say, Jen. Thank you. That's awesome. I'm I'm happy that you um, are having fun making some art, and I think it's a cool thing that you can do that. Will you do any kind of follow ups for your surviving characters? Yeah, I talked about that a little bit. Well, I would love to. Um, make more, please. Yeah, I will make more. It's these things are really a lot of work to make. So you guys have to understand, animation is very time consuming. If you want to make something specific, like if you don't care about what it looks like, whatever, you're just trying to throw something together, you could kind of do it probably pretty fast. But it's really important to me that the stories are told in a really deliberate way. Because I've always said that, like, you might have the greatest story in the world, but if you don't tell it well, it's not a good story. And so the execution really matters to me. You might think you have a great story, but you get a bunch of friends around a campfire and you try to tell it, but you don't tell it very well. They're going to say, that wasn't that interesting. So Forestia says it's 3 a.m. You got to get to sleep, Forestia. Get to bed. Is the music that I make for my videos copyrighted? I want to use the music that is from one of my videos to make a horror game. Well, yeah, no, it's copyrighted, but I'm not going to enforce, like, if it's in a video, a reaction video, or something like that. But yeah, no, it's mine. Um, Anthony says Mercury Filmworks does animation, but does the company also include screenwriting? Anthony, if you're talking about Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark, I write Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark. I don't have writers or anything like that. But there are shows that Mercury makes that we engage writers to write stuff. But yeah. All right. William asks, will this be a VOD on my channel, or will I stream more? It's going to be a VOD. Yeah, I'll save it, and we can watch it back later. And I will stream more. I like doing it. It's kind of fun. I love, just hanging out with you guys. So this is super cool. Do you plan to keep the story narrative separate permanently as separate canons existing in the same world? Mr. Axide or Axicide? I don't know. For now, they're stories that exist parallel to each other, but it would be really interesting to do sort of crossover ideas with characters. And like one of the ideas for a story I had was called F13, and it's about a vending machine behind this Q Mart that everybody knows if you go there and you type in F13 and you put the money in the machine, there is no item for F13, but what'll happen is it will give you whatever it is that you want. It will grant your deepest desire. It's kind of a monkey's paw tale, right? And so obviously things go awry when dealing with these wishes. And one of the wishes, ultimately results in like one of the Q-Mart itself getting robbed and the guy getting shot. And astute viewers in that story would know, oh, that's actually Hallie and Laura under those masks that's robbing that place. Stuff like that I feel like would be fun to connect those things, but also even probably more like in-depth crossovers, like taking characters and figuring out where they are and maybe finding ways of doing stories that connect them in some way. I think Sparrow and Haley would be friends. Alake says, are you making all of this alone? And the answer is no. Some stuff I make alone, but then like some of these videos are huge, and I'm just lucky that I work at a place where there's a whole bunch of amazing artists who can do stuff that are really cool. So when we have like, some downtime or between projects kind of thing where there's some availability, you can sort of sneak in some work and get stuff like this done. How do you make creature designs? Tips and tricks along with this. How do you make the sounds? So Asterix Productions asks that. How do I make the sounds? A lot of it is just sound effects that for like, especially like the Devil's Rock. My friends who I worked with on Hilda um, did the sound design for me on the Devil's Rock and on the Worm too. And so for stuff like that, I have like, obviously super cool sound designers and engineers to mix that kind of stuff. And then what I'll end up doing is I usually temp it all in first with just like I'll grab sound effects from wherever, the internet, or I'll make them myself. Like a lot of times I just like vocalize stuff into a mic and then use that as a temp, and then that's the flavor that a sound designer can sort of like find and do cool stuff. Uh, and but stuff like I think my stepdad's a werewolf is me mixed with some stock like sound effects. If you guys, Artlist is a great website that you can take stuff from. If you get a membership, you can get access to a great sound library. And then like the werewolf is like just mixing stuff together. You take that and you sort of like then find a roar and you kind of like put all that stuff together, and you can, and then the kid breathing, you just sort of like just do stuff like that. I don't know if you guys can pick it up on the mic, but it's I mean we could go through some of that stuff. I could show you actually. That'd be a cool idea. Um do I have ideas for possible episodes? Yeah, I've got like 20 of them written, but it's the making of them that takes all the time. What was it like working on Hilda with the Swedish mythology, and do any of those ideas still stay with you? Working on Hilda was great. It was amazing. I loved it. It was, I put so much into that show. And I got to work with people who I just love and respect so much. And so it was you know, a very important time in my life, and it's a work that I'm really proud of too. So I'm glad that it will exist for, God knows, hopefully a while on Netflix and people can watch it and check it out. Um, was the stepdad actually bitten by a werewolf? Orion says. I don't know. Do you think? I mean, he looked, a little more than grumpy. Hamburger Helper says, not a question, but I found it pretty amusing for you guys to put Laura in the thumbnail for the Devil's Rock, only for her to die like a minute in. It caught me off guard. That was intentional. I did that on purpose. It's more than that too. It's also that I intentionally framed her as how you would traditionally interpret the main focal character to be in those first few shots. It's all about Laura. Haley is there, right? She's there in the shots, but clearly you're getting the impression that Laura is going to be our main character, and that hopefully that works in that when she gets taken out, it's sort of just like ripping off a band-aid, which is something I wanted to do too with this story, where I wanted to, right out of the gate, I wanted to make a statement that it was a little grim, a little darker, a little more intense than the previous stories, because I also wanted to take it to a place at the end where it was actually hopeful and a little beautiful, and give a real happy ending to this story. So I felt like in order to earn that happy ending for a horror short, you kind of have to go a little hard out of the gate. So I tried it. Hopefully it worked. I don't know. um, Bunny B says, "Hey, I made a small animation. I wonder if you could watch it sometime." I don't know, Bunny. Yeah, leave a comment on a post or something, and I'll check it out, man. Um, Sword underscore 67 says, "Not gonna lie, I thought Haley would leave Logan to die after she ditched Laura." That's kind of important too. I think I wanted to make sure that she was ambiguous enough that you wouldn't, it could go either way. You could see it and interpret it as though Haley is looking out across the field at Logan still stranded on the rock and regretfully resigning herself to the idea that she was going to leave him there and make off with an escape. But hopefully you could also read it as intense conflict inside of her, knowing that she has to do something. She can't um, just let him die. Um, so I don't know. Hopefully it works. We'll see. Elisa says, "What is your favorite Hilda episode?" I love the last episode and the episode where they are stuck in a perfect house. I don't know what my favorite Hilda episode is. I have a lot. I really, I love the first two episodes. I love, like, I don't love the execution so much. I think, obviously I could have been a little stronger there, but I love the storytelling and I think it's a strong, powerful statement. Um, I love The Mountain King. I think that was really fun to do a movie. Man, there's so many episodes that are so cool. I don't know, the Deer Fox, obviously. The 50-Year Night, the Stone Forest. Yeah, and I love the finale too. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I gotta catch up with the chat. Orion says Black Hound was his favorite episode. That's cool. I love that episode. Um, of all the monsters you've created, which one do you think is worse or genuinely evil, be they human or otherwise? Oh, Dr. Merrick is the worst monster of all. Easily. The only question is why would Haley not search the police SUV for more stuff instead of just siphoning its tank? Because it's locked. You ever tried to get into a police car? That's unbreakable glass. You can't open them from the outside. You have to have, like, the cop has to do it. The cop has the keys, and unfortunately, old JL is incapacitated in the corn. Forestia said, I love how David is screaming like a girl. That's super funny. Was Luke Pearson's art style an influence on my own? I don't know, probably a little bit. I think the show Hilda is like a fusion of our styles. But obviously you can't work together for so long without kind of infecting your, I draw the same thing for years and years every day, and it kind of must get in there somewhere, right? And Luke's a great artist. He's a really just inspiring guy. Do I have any rules about making fan art of my stories and characters? No, not necessarily. I mean, um, I don't know. I can't think of any rules that I would want to put in place. I think as long as you have fun and, you know, whatever, I don't care. Um, Everyone loves the deer fox. Yeah, I know. That was like on Hilda when we would make episodes a lot of times, it's a process. So you hire a writer and they write a draft, and that sort of like then Stephanie and Luke and I will figure stuff out, right? And so it goes through a lot of iterations trying to figure out how you um form an episode. But Luke wrote the deer fox, and that script, when I read that draft that he turned in, I was like, this is awesome. This, like, I think I had like one suggestion of like something. I don't even remember what it was, but I think overall it was like that script was so freaking good. Um, and I knew it was going to be a very powerful episode. And so we we worked really hard on it, and the team, the animation team that worked on it was so into it, and it was just such a great thing. I think I unfortunately it was an episode where there was a lot of dialogue, less scenes, and so they you know they it came in a little long, whereas like on the page it might be like, oh, Twig leaves Trollberg, and like then on the screen it's like a 10-minute sequence of well, that's exaggeration, but um the song from the opening of The Worm is so good, it has a permanent place on my playlist now. Thanks, Kodiak. I love that song too. Originally, I had found this song on the internet called, what was it called? I don't remember. It was from some band. Maybe I shouldn't say what it was, but I had found this song, and I sort of had fallen in love with it. There's this tiny little indie band, and I had thought, oh, if I could use this kind of song in a video at some point, that would be really cool. And then when I was making the worm, I thought, oh, this would be a great opportunity for that. So that's what I had used in the temp to cut the opening sequence. And then because I had waited so long, that band sort of disbanded and didn't exist anymore. And then I couldn't contact anybody to ask them about using that song. And I was like, oh, what the heck? So I had to throw that out. And then I went to Ryan and I said, dude, I was gonna like use this song from this band here, but I can't get in contact with them. And so what I want to make is like some kind of like bright, catchy, poppy song that is going to really contrast sort of the dark, moody vibe of Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark. And he was like, okay, let me think about it. And then he came up with this whole freaking song. And then it's just like it was so good that like we only did the first half of it, and then after we were done the worm, we went back and did another half of the song just to like extend it out so we could release a full version on Spotify and on my YouTube and stuff. It was so fun. Would you, JB Triton says, would you create a horror animation with a marine monster theme? I have written one called The Unknown, and it takes place in the summer of 1944 and on the Atlantic Ocean, where a young soldier is pulled into a lifeboat after the ship that he was being transported back to Halifax on is sunk in an engagement with an enemy warship. In fact, both ships are lost in the skirmish, and when he's pulled into this lifeboat, he finds that it's by 3 German sailors. And a lot of it is a tale of survival, but there's also something in the water that's stalking them at night. So I don't want to say too much about it because that was gonna be my second video after the Pine Creepers, because it was a small story that I felt like I could easily do by myself. But then once there was like some availability at the studio for some artists, I was like, oh well, then let's do a bigger story. Let's do the worm, because that one is a lot harder to do. If I could collaborate with someone, who would it be and what would I want to make? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that though. All right, let's see. Have I worked on Genndy Tartakovsky's projects before? Dagon 1954 says, I have not worked with Genndy, but my wife has. My wife her name's Erica, and she was a character designer on Primal. Did I enjoy any of the Twister movies, says Cal? I saw the original Twister back when it came out. Um, I haven't seen the new one, but it looks cool. Looks like a fun, sort of big tentpole action movie. Okay, I want to show you guys something here. Let's just real quick. What time is it? It's already 9, so let me go through some werewolf short stuff. Let's do that. All right, one sec here. Let me pull up some this. All right, so I shared my screen. There we go. So you guys want to see the, oh, this is the werewolf design. Let me open that up. You can get a good look at the full thing. So it's not a super clean drawing that I had done. It's a little rough still. But a lot of what I was trying to do with this was find a very interesting fusion between like primate human and wolf, lupine, I guess you would say. Anthony says, looks like a Wendigo. I guess you could interpret it that way. Wendigo has a lot of differing sort of interpretations, but yeah. So this is a weird, awkward pose. I normally, like, if you want to make this presentable to people, you would want to put this leg back, make it a little more dynamic, open the silhouette a little bit. But I was drawing it for myself, so it didn't matter. And then I had some drawings like, yeah, like, again, these are all so rough because I was just like, I was just trying to figure out what this looked like, right? So you can sort of see like what the face, I don't know what's in here. We should probably, I should not be turning on layers that I don't know what they are. Where's this? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what that is. Maybe I was. What is this? Is that anything? No. Oh, this is more the front thing. I don't know what I was doing, honestly. Yeah, but you can sort of see what the whole thing looks like because you don't get a super good look at it in the short. And I think if I were to like revisit the werewolf, which I would love to do, you know, I love werewolves. I think they're super cool. I would probably flesh out the look of what this werewolf could look like, you know. So let's go look at that. And so like what happens is like you come up with an idea, right? And I had this idea of this. I was trying to experiment with this framing of the 9 by 16 vertical frame, which is something that up until recently was I'd never really thought about doing like tall compositions. But now like with cell phones and stuff and Instagram and TikTok is like, oh, that's a cool like way to tell stories. But it's a completely different idea of how to frame something. And so I was just playing around with sketching out some frames of like what would look cool as a dynamic composition, and I came up with this idea of this kid hiding behind his bed and sort of trying to frame on a Dutch angle the room and getting like a big staging area for the werewolf to prowl through the hallway. And so when like there's like a whole bunch more background there that looks yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't finish it. Like when I knew it wasn't going to be on screen, it's like you just kind of wing that stuff. Um, and you can see, oh, hey, that's cool. That's like an earlier version of the character. What else do I got in there? I guess that's it. So yeah, and like so the background even like I don't have the sketch of the background anymore. I think it's gone from the file, but it's like you just thumb it out really, really quick like this, right? And then I tied that down a little bit more and kind of like figured out what he needed to look like. And then obviously again figured out what the werewolf needed to look like. And I think I think I have that somewhere. One sec. I think I have one with the werewolf in there that I used to try and color things. Do I? God knows. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I'll just open that one again. Anywho. So yeah, you tie it down a little bit more. And then so like something like this is what on this one, my buddy Shane actually animated the kid. So I drew this and gave it to Shane and said, okay, here's what I want. Him doing just a breathing cycle, look out, and then come back into the position and go back to the breathing cycle, right? And then I animated the werewolf going through the thing. And so if Shane was on, he could talk about doing his animation for the kid. But I mean, he's a really talented animator, and so he knew exactly like how to make it super cool and badass. And then I have some like animated versions here. I'll show you like in this is just Adobe Animate or Adobe Flash, I guess you could say. Because this is an old version I like to use. I don't like the new version. That's kind of cool, but so my audio tracks up here. It's kind of a complex file because it's got everything in it. Let me find out like where. Okay, that. What do I want to show you guys? Line. Oh, that was sound. So loud, sorry. That blew out your ears. Oh, wait, there we go. So a lot of this too is like, just, I only animated what you need to animate. So like the, if you see behind the doorway, like there's not much there beyond that, right? Only animate what you absolutely have to. And if you look at it like with just the lines, you can sort of see like a cool idea of what that looks like. So all of that is like, it's just artwork drawn into this timeline. So this layer is the lines of this stuff. So you just draw these frames. And then there's all this sound effects that I have in here, just as temp in. I usually will mix it in Audition afterwards, but just to pace my animation, I like to temp in like where I want to put certain sound effects. So you can see, like if I just want to hear like just his steps, I can just do that, and you can watch the thing like with just the steps happening. And if I turn that off, you can. So you can sort of hear like I temped in placements for all of that stuff. And then if you want to, you put in the roars and the growls that I mix together, and you end up with this cool sort of. That whole idea, right? So that's the basics of like what you need to do. It's a lot of drawing. So all of these like boxes that you see here, those are frames, like drawings. So frame 69 is the first one where that drawing appears. Then that's held for 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. So I animated that on 4s. And then this drawing is held for 4 frames. Then this drawing is held for 4 frames. And so it's just like you just draw out all of these things, right? And you create this kind of like sense of movement. I know probably some of you guys in the stream know about, how animation works and stuff, but maybe for someone who doesn't, it might be interesting. And then also you then, let me turn off this doorway. You can like fill it, right? So these are all the colors of this werewolf that I used. Basically just copied this line layer and then was like, oh, I want his fur to be red. And so then in every freaking drawing, I have to go, okay, let me fill in all of this, in every thing. And then I can copy it and remove the lines and just have like separate layers. I like to do separate layers for different things because I put it all together in After Effects, which I can show you guys that too if you want to see it. But yeah, and then also, so you do the basics, right? You do your line and you do your fill. And then on top of that, you also have to animate some light. So I actually animated these lighting shapes on this thing. And then I also, there's like a separate layer. If I turn all that off, I just do that. It's just his eye. Because I isolate that as a pass to then when I'm doing the compositing, I'll add some treatment to it. And then on top of all that, so I got all of that stuff, you put it all together and you can sort of like watch everything move, then the other issue is that there's like a lot of light spilling in from the hallway. It's this sort of stark idea, and that he is actually interacting with that light and cutting it. So I have to hand animate these shadows. That maybe I should frame that a little nicer so you guys can see it. But so I hand animate those. Shea Butter says, "How does one make such sounds?" You just, you go. You just do some growls, and then you go on Artlist and you find some other monster sound effects and you mix them in. And you put them all together and you get a cool sort of like monster. So then obviously you have to do it for the way back too. You have to do all these things. So and again, also animating all of the shadows. And then the thing is, so which app do I use to animate? All-rounder. This is Flash, or Adobe Animate as it's now known. But you can do it in different things in different softwares, right? This is just one way to do it. So what I'll do is I'll take all this stuff, right? And I'll export all of these passes. So there's the line, the fill, the light, the shadow, the eye, whatever else you need, right? And then I bring it all in. First, what I like to do is I like drawing in Photoshop. And I think that the line, the artwork, the brushes that you can get in Photoshop are really cool. So what I'll do is probably go over the lines with a pencil brush so that it looks more organic and I can get like just a cooler looking drawing out of it, because I find that particularly in older versions of Adobe Animate, the line is a little dead. It's a little like, I don't know, it's kind of flat, which can work for some looks. Like that can actually look really good if you treat it well and you design things around that. But in my case, I didn't. And so, I kind of wanted like a more hand-drawn look. So I did go over the lines, which you can see in like, if I go, where's my wolf stuff here? There we go. So the both actions, I have things. And I don't know if you guys know how to animate in Photoshop, but it's actually kind of like easy. Let me see here. So you go your timeline. So there's no timeline, or is there? No, there's no timeline here. I'll just do let me do a new file here. Anyway, you can just as a side, you can see sort of like redrawing the lines in like a more drawn look. Gato says opinion on slasher movies. I got a lot of opinions on slasher movies. I've seen every single slasher movie. I'm a big fan of slasher movies. I'm the kind of guy who loves the first 4 Friday the 13th movies, and not so much the later ones. So that should give you a good indicator. If you are a connoisseur of the slasher movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. What are my thoughts on Jason Voorhees? Part 4 of Jason is the best Jason. I think I like part 2 as a movie as well. Jason isn't as powerful, I guess, as a figure in that movie. He's not as evocative and iconic. But in part 4, he is absolutely like at his peak. I know a lot of people love part 6 and the preceding film, sort of like the self-awareness and the humor and stuff, but I love the first 4. What about Elm Street? Love it. Freddy Krueger. I mean, the first Nightmare on Elm Street is an amazing movie. I love that movie. Robert Englund as Freddy is amazing. And I like the sequels. I think they have some diminishing returns as they go along. Um, but I have, obviously a soft spot for some of the later ones that I had seen as a kid when they were coming out. But you know, uh, the first Nightmare on Elm Street is awesome, and the third one is awesome. The Chuck Russell, Frank Darabont, Dream Warriors. That's such a cool sequel to the first movie. Um, Terrifier. Here's the thing. I haven't actually seen Terrifier. I saw All Hallows Eve, or I think it's called All Hallows Eve. The very first Terrifier movie was not called Terrifier. Um, it was an anthology film, and one of the segments was an Art the Clown segment. And I had watched that movie way back when it first came out, and I loved it. And I didn't really have much interest in watching like the rest of the Terrifier movies because I'm not super into like intense gore and stuff all that much. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just doesn't really speak to me all that much personally. But people seem to love that movie and its sequels, so they're doing great stuff. Obviously, people are into it. Am I a fan of the movie Smile? I haven't seen it, but people have said that the worm reminds them of that movie. I don't know what Smile's about, but I assume it's sort of a similar, sort of mimetic idea. Asterisk Productions asks, "Is it all right to have a series without voice actors?" I mean, yeah. If you, I mean, Gendy makes stuff without dialogue. Like the go watch Primal. I mean, there's voice actors because there is like guttural stuff, but you could do something with the dialogue. Do I like cosmic horror because the worm it looks like a cosmic horror? Yeah, I love cosmic horror. I am deep into Lovecraft stories. Weren't you the one who made Hilda's Netflix animations? It seems a lot. Uh, yeah, I am Andy. I was the director and supervising producer on Hilda on Netflix. That's why you might notice, some familiarity with some of my work because it looks like I drew it. I don't know. So does Hilda. Although I should say also it's like a collaboration too. It's not just me. Especially Hilda was like such a vast group of people that took to make that show. And Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark too. There's a lot of people who come and help me on Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark that adds so much to the project. Like ideas that people have sometimes are like stuff that I wouldn't have thought of and go, oh damn, that's like super cool. Like particularly on the Devil's Rock, Antu, who worked on some storyboard stuff with me. Like Antu is an amazing storyboard artist, and he has such cool ideas. And there was stuff that he came up with that I was like, oh man, uh, ideas I would have never had alone. And it adds so much to it when you get people who are like really into it and can collaborate with you and contribute to the story in a way that makes it richer and cooler. It's such a cool experience to have people like that. And when you find people like that, you just always want to work with them on everything. Do my stories take place in Canada? Well, sometimes, but in the case of the Pine Creepers, that takes place in Michigan. Have you watched the Arcane series? Yeah, I did. I watched the first season of Arcane, and it was really cool. What horror media would you say has influenced your own sensibilities with designing, writing your own horror stories? I answered that a little bit earlier. I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and his books are really sort of formative for me. Um, and especially with Don't Walk Home Alone After Dark, it was really after I was on a trip somewhere. I can't remember where I was going. Somewhere probably some long flight across the continent, and I was reading The Night Shift, Stephen King's short story collection again, and I kept thinking like, man, I could just like animate little stories like this, and so I found some old stuff that I was doing and started thinking, okay, let me turn this into a cool visual experiment. But I also love like in terms of modern filmmakers, I don't know, Mike Flanagan is a guy who does like really cool stuff now, like recently. He's amazing stuff. And like I said, Neil Marshall is a guy who I really admire. I don't know. It's such a hard question to ask. Like, there's so many things that inspired me. Did I ever read from a Buick 8? No, I did not read from a Buick 8. Have I watched Supernatural? I watched some Supernatural, yeah, long, long time ago. Did I see Scavenger's Reign? Yes, Scavenger's Reign is an amazing show. I really enjoyed it. I um I was a couple episodes in and I was hooked. I think that's a really cool TV show, and I'm glad that it had a chance to get made. All right, let me just give me one sec. I'm going to open some, do the After Effects stuff here. One sec. Show you guys some of that. Thoughts on George A. Romero? I love Night of the Living Dead. It is an amazing movie. I was so struck by it when I saw it as a kid. Because you kind of like, you go into it, it has all this like mythology built around it. It's so cool. Um, and you, because it has so much history. It's this iconic film, and it looks kind of like it's black and white, and it looks kind of cheap, and so you start watching it thinking like, oh, I've seen campy older B movies before, and then it sucks you in, and it becomes so like immersive and interesting and dire, and especially in the context of that it was so unique and sort of pioneered some of what it was doing, and that's something that is so admirable. Elisa asks, Andy, do you know Kid Cosmic? It's a very good show with a bunch of aliens. I do know Kid Cosmic because a bunch of my friends worked on it. Um, and it's a really well animated show on Netflix if you guys want to check it out. It's a kids show, but it has like all kinds of cool, fun action and storytelling, great art direction. Hopefully, Scavenger's Reign season 2 can be made someday, says Hamburger Helper, and I agree, absolutely. But they are making what's it called? There's a new Adult Swim show they're making. The guys who made Scavenger's Reign. Do you guys know what that was? Hold on, I'm just reading through some stuff here, guys. Um, do you believe feathered dinosaurs aren't scary, as some people say? I think it could be scary. I think it could be terrifying. Have I seen The Thing? Of course. John Carpenter is like the man. The Thing is such a amazing movie. Is it fine if someone already made a server about your show? Because I found this stream from a community, Don't Want to Come Alone After Dark server that seemingly were made in the Worm era. Yeah, for sure. I don't, it's fine if people want to make communities and chat amongst themselves. That's cool. Oh, yeah, Common Side Effects, Orion. Thanks. That's what the show's called. It's a really cool show. It's a little more comedy. It's not like a broad, like, wacky comedy, but it's Scavenger's Reign is pretty straight, and Common Side Effects has a little more wackiness. Am I familiar with Junji Ito? Yes. And I watched the recent Uzumaki anime adaptation. I started watching it. All right, I tried, guys. It kind of fell apart a little bit, but yeah, it's those stories are so ambitious and cool. You would want to see them like realized one day. Well, there was like the Netflix anthology thing. Was that a Junji Ito adaptation? I don't remember. But then there was like the newer like one that was done of the Uzumaki Spiral stuff. Um, let's see. Have I seen Channel Zero? No, but a friend of mine told me that I should watch it. That's really cool. Creature Crash asked, so if I helped direct Hilda the show, what part did I play when making it? Excuse me. A lot of parts. I had to wear a lot of hats on it, but as the director, you kind of helped to define the look. I was also the art director and supervising producer, and so it's just a lot of stuff that I was doing um, on the show. Just oversee every part of it, every department, and help um, make sure it's all cohesive and adheres to the best possible story that we could tell. Um, yeah, there wasn't a Junji Ito anthology. That's what I was thinking of, and I didn't like that one that much either. I thought it didn't quite live up to the potential. Um, all right, so let me just share some stuff here with you guys. So here's just a little peek at the After Effects file for the Werewolf short, right? So a lot of this stuff is like done in layers where you have to sort of break it down. So if you take this, obviously there's the kid comp. So kid comp looks like this. He has lines that you can take off. Wait, actually zoom this in a little bit. That's not very nice for you guys to have to look at that so wide. Get out of my big fat head. There we go. And so again, it's like there is his fill. Oh, my dog's barking. There's these little like shadow tones as a layer. There's the lighting layers, which I doubled up and set to different blending modes. That these are the things that I animated in the just animate files and stuff, right? Because Shane had done like a really great job on the base, and then I just went in and animated all the shadow tones and all that kind of fun stuff, all that little compositing. You put it all together, and you get this like comp of this kid, and you can watch him just isolated. He just leans in, pulls back, breathes. And it's a loop. So, and then you'd sort of take like, obviously the lighting is a component of itself. You could just see like just the lighting. Let me put that over there so you guys can see it. So it looks a little rough in this preview because it's clipped to the character silhouette. So you might see some rough drawing edges outside of his shape. But there's that. It's like all these like little things that come together to make this kid layer. There's the background. There's the room. And the interesting thing is there's two layers, right? So there's like the room and then the room unlit. So this is just the room with all the light. And then that way that can be cut away by a mask those shadows that I animated earlier. They can cut away that to reveal what's underneath it, which is the unlit room. So I paint two versions of the background essentially. One where it's lit and one where it's unlit. And same thing with the floor. There's like a lit version and an unlit version. So that those shadow mask shapes that I had animated, I use them to drive a mask. That looks like he's blocking the light. Because essentially shadows are just the absence of light. And then the werewolf comp, you can see sort of the general look, which looks weird out of context because everything's so bright because he's in the hallway. So his lines are all blown out and stuff. But it's the same stuff where it's like there's the fill, there's the line, there's the light layers, there's his eyes, which I then pump up and glow by just duplicating, adding a Gaussian blur, blend mode them to sort of get that cool look. And then, yeah, so you put all that together, you layer him. Obviously, you could just look behind the thing and it looks a little less cool. Yeah, and that's kind of like how you put together something like this. Like really just it's break it down by layers, you draw stuff. Let's see what we got here in the chat. We're talking about different people from different places. Oh, that's cool. We got Venezuela, Brazil. Welcome. That's cool. That's so crazy to have people from like just different places that just kind of enjoy the stories and it's such a cool thing to be able to share that stuff together. That's so fun. Hamburger Helper asks how I decided on Double Come After Dark. I talked about that a little bit earlier. The name just sounded cool. And it wasn't taken, and that's kind of hard to find stuff that isn't already taken these days. When directing on Hilda, what are some of the main things you changed from the books to the series? Well, there was a lot of stuff that changed from the books to the series. Because the books were it was Luke's stuff. It was his very sort of personal project that he wrote and drew and did all that. And then when we made the show, it was a collaboration between a lot of different people, producers and broadcast executives, and Stephanie, who ran all the writing, and Luke and me and Kurt and Brian, and eventually there's a whole bunch of people who the show went on and evolved and welcomed in all like really great people that we got to work with, and Bella, who gave Hilda her voice, which was like when we were first starting out, we were like, what does Hilda even sound like? I don't know. That's such a weird question to ask. And then we had seen Bella in Game of Thrones and thought like, yeah, that'd be cool. Creature Crash, sorry, asks question. Since Don't Come Alone After Dark has kind of been popping off, can you confirm that episodes will be coming out more frequently? And can you tell us anything about the next story? It takes a long time to make episodes, guys. Like it takes a long time to do this. So it's gonna take a bit for me to get the next video out. I I would love to do this as like a full-time thing and just lean into this, but I feel like in order to do that, I would have to turn it into, you know, I don't know, a little bit more of a production, and maybe that'll happen. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen yet. I'm still kind of like figuring out what's possible because I don't know. Like maybe can you imagine if you were like, okay, now I'm going to lean into this and this is what we're doing, and then you're like ask everyone to help fund like making something, and then you get nothing, and you're like, oh well, never mind. That would be kind of terrible. So I don't know what the future will hold, but um, as for right now, I'm going to keep going, keep working on it, keep making stuff no matter what. And I'm talking with people about trying to make a TV show adaptation, which looks promising. Maybe I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's hard to tell. Nothing's ever made until it's made, but hopefully that happens too. I think that would be really cool because you could really tell big stories on TV. I don't know what form that would take, whether that would be sort of like a true detective kind of idea of like a season long story, every season being a different story, but or an anthology show or just a solid straight narrative show. I'm not sure, but that would be really cool to do too. Either way, I'm going to keep doing stuff. So it's going to take time. Will I tell you anything about the next story? Earlier in the stream, I did talk a little bit about one of the stories I wrote called The Unknown, which I don't know if that will be the next story, but it might be. Depends on the situation of what the next story ends up, how I make it, whether it's with just myself or with other people, I don't know. Do I use a screen tablet or a screenless one? I use a Wacom Cintiq tablet to draw onto. Are the monsters mutated cicadas? Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Um, Luna asks, use rig animation, right? And the answer is sometimes use rig animation. Sometimes I just draw animation. Sometimes, in the case of a couple of shots on the Devil's Rock, I used 3D for some things, which Stefan Frank, who's a guy that he's like super experienced using Blender and stuff. I don't know anything about 3D. I try to keep up with like the newfangled stuff, but um, he helped me kind of figure out a lot of that. I made a lot of the corn shots where it was like running through the corn and doing that, and then Stefan did the models for the vehicles, the cars. I designed like just these like this is what I gave him. I'll show you guys some like um like so you give him like this. I draw this and give it to Stefan, and then he turns it into like a 3D model that then I can use in the scenes where you need like dynamic action, and then like for scenes where it's static, you just draw it into the background. Like if I then take like let's see here, I think I have like a background somewhere I can show you guys. Like this is one of them. One sec. Sorry. All right, here we go. Oh, what? Oh, I didn't save the Photoshop file. I thought I had the Photoshop file in here. One sec. Oh, I did. It was just beside it. I clicked the wrong file. King Boo says, hello, I mean this out of purely constructive criticism, but I think in terms of animation, instead of showing still frames, slowly panning the shots or adding a small rustling of leaves would be good. Yeah, I agree with you, King. I know. It's like I would love for the whole thing to be like fully animated, but it's just a matter of time. And I think ultimately there was a lot of stuff on the Devil's Rock where I was really focusing on trying to get these more kinetic action shots to really work so that the whole story could kind of come together. And so that meant I had to try and like make the other stuff as easy to make as possible. So and the Devil's Rock had so much stuff. It was so big. Such a huge episode that ultimately, yeah, it would be great if everything was animated, but you know, gotta do what you can do. Anyway, so you can see here how we kind of put this together. There's like layers of stuff. So this car, oh my gosh, this is gonna be wild because this is probably pretty messy in this file. A lot of stuff was done. I use a lot of clipping masks and stuff. I don't know if you guys know, but like, yeah. So this car is just like it's drawn. Dino Dude Play says my bro complained that the car wasn't fully a Challenger. It's a Challenger. Come on. I love the Challenger. It's a cool car. It's like a piece of art. The aesthetics of it, it's just like the only thing you can get that looks like classic 70s muscle car. I'm just reading through some chat here, guys. Why did the Devil's Rock get this unique name? It was inspired by it was originally just called The Rock. And I thought that's going to probably not work well because Dwayne Johnson and the Michael Bay movie. And it's just like, so I can't call it The Rock. So it was just sort of an idea. Like where I grew up, the rocks have names sometimes. So there's, you know, like big rocks on the beach where you call them like Turby's Rock or Penelope's Rock, right? And so they all have these names, and I thought it'd be so ominous to call it the Devil's Rock. Um, and then that sort of evolved. And there's also the place in Ontario called the Devil's Rock, which has a lot of folklore attached to it, which was something that my buddy Shane talked to me about. And I said, "Oh, that sounds like a cool idea for a name for the rock." So I just took it and used it on this. So yeah, fictionalized idea. Thoughts on the Cybertruck? I don't know. Don't really have any thoughts on the Cybertruck. Um, Shea Butter says the Devil's Rock is actually the first video I watched from your channel, and I liked it. Oh, thank you. Or you loved it. Oh, it's even better. Thanks, Shay. I appreciate that. What the heck? Rusty is back. You're back. All right. Luna asks, "Do I have other writers?" No. For the Devil's Rock, actually, like writing this stuff, the writing the worm was the hardest. That was the toughest one to do. Um, the Pine Creepers, I wrote in bursts. Like I wrote the first half of the Pine Creepers in like a day, and then I wrote the second half in like a day, but they were like months apart. The worm was a struggle because I had the whole story kind of figured out, and then I had tried different versions, and I had tried to get someone to come on and help me writing it, but it just wasn't happening. So I ended up just writing it, and it worked out. I liked it in the end. There's one part of the worm that I really don't like though, and I every time I hear it, I cringe, and it's when I say. Whatever it was left me with more questions than answers. It's like it's such a cliche line, guys. It is. I don't know. In my head, I remember doing it and saying, "Oh, it's okay because that's something the character would say." It feels like the character, even though it's cliche. But like listening to it back, I could have said that in a more interesting way. It's such a cliche thing to say. More questions than answers. I don't know. I didn't like that. I cringe every time I listen to it. And then the Devil's Rock was actually fairly easy to write. That was something I wrote really rapidly, and then I showed it to a buddy of mine and said, Like, what do you think? Do you have any suggestions for this? And so my buddy Spencer um, gave me a couple cool ideas. And I think the only thing that's in there that Spencer came up with was the 100 meters in just under 11 seconds. That his thing was, oh, it felt like he wanted, he said, what I should do is make sure that Haley felt like she wanted to help Laura and not skip over that. Like that we have I had Laura crying in the corn and that Haley didn't go out and save her. But he was like, maybe you should like spend a little more time on that and like at least give some attention to the idea that she wants to help her, to help with the ambiguity of her character, because you don't want her to come off as like completely heartless. And so I had come up with that, and he came up with the this idea of like the Logan running track. But yeah, I write them all alone, and it's sort of a it's a really complex process of trying to figure out thematically and character wise and plot wise how you tie all that stuff together. So it's not something you can really just drop in another writer so easily. Shea Butter says the line's not that bad, but I don't know. I don't know. It hurts me every time I hear it. Can you explain the color grading on that sky out there? You mean like the one that I'm showing on the screen right now, like this painting? The one that got away? Yeah. It's just the sun is coming up. So it's dawn. It's warm, dreamlike almost, you know? And it gives the lighting like a really distinct, there's the blurred version there, directionality. There's really no like trick to it. That's just a drawing, like that, or a gradient like that. That's all that looks like if you take this off. There's a lot of layers in here, which it's a mess. This file's a mess, so it's not really good for presentation. But yeah, it's sort of a gradation of like really warm, higher value colors that sort of gradually become a cooler, lower value purple. A big thing too, like if you're making like trying to break down the art of Don't Come Alone After Dark, a large element of it is space and depth. So you want to, the air itself is thick. And so as things get further away from your camera, you want to sort of understand like what is the ambient color in the scene and then mix it in more and more the farther back you get. So you can see like these steps. In front, it's a little clearer, and then it's washed a little further back the further back you get onto those trees, and then even more the further back you get, it gets like way, way more and more and more. So it creates this sense of like space and scale. Um, and and then I use tricks. So like this looks kind of flat, right? So you see this and you go, okay, this looks kind of weird. But like, so I'll put this little light behind the car and it relieves the silhouette of the car, it creates contrast. And then I add a stark shadow with consistent light directionality of like the rocks are casting these same long shadows. And then use the foreground to sort of frame the whole thing and guide your attention. And then I also added this like extra gradient overlay, just a focal point to like drive sort of like the light direction from screen right to screen left. Hold on, let's go. Let's just do the camera here. Okay, and then the hardest process aside from animation when creating the series. Uh, the backgrounds, drawing and painting. That's a real challenge. You need to do a how to draw or make art book. That would be fun. I mean, I want to make like videos about like just tutorial stuff and exercises people can do, but I'll do that at some point. There's stuff I wanted to do on the stream, but I'm kind of, I don't know, running out of time. It's already 10, so I think I might wrap it up soon. There's a couple frequent questions that I have that I want to get to because I know there's people who keep asking the same things over and over again. So one of the things people keep asking is why not set the field on fire right away? When you're on the rock, you have a lighter, why not set it on fire? You're in the field. You don't want to set the field on fire. That's a phenomenally bad idea. Um, that would be certain death to light a cornfield on fire while you're in the middle of and so I think ultimately I had written a line in that sort of moment, that part of the story about like they have to be careful not to set it on fire because but I thought like, oh, that's not necessary. I think most people would kind of pick up on the idea that you probably shouldn't set the field on fire if you're sitting in the middle of it. But I guess a lot of people did not agree with that. I don't know. Yeah, you would definitely, like ultimately, guys, it's like, one sec, let me show you guys something. Let me do this. Let's go.
Dove antiperspirant.
Oh my God, sorry about that. Blasting. Okay, so just to illustrate a point here. See this? This is you. You set that field on fire. That's you. I don't think that that's a place you want to be. So I would just say, in response to that criticism, it was thought through. I intentionally left any mention of that out of the story because I assumed that most people would just intuit that answer, but I guess not. I want to clarify. It was not an accident. It was not, it was very intentional. Yeah, exactly. If the smoke doesn't get you, the heat will. It's just a phenomenally bad idea and very dangerous. So yeah, that's one thing I want to address because it just, one of those things. A lot of people ask, why didn't she call 911? It doesn't matter if you don't have service, you can still call 911. This isn't like you don't have service that like you didn't pay your bill. This is you don't have service, like there is no cell service in this area. You're in a valley in the middle of nowhere. I know it may be hard for people to believe, but there are still places all over the place that cannot reach any kind of reception for cell service or internet or anything, um, especially these sort of very remote northern areas. So you cannot call anybody in those areas. Um, we already sort of addressed what are the corn monsters. I wrote down just a couple of these questions. Something I get a lot asked is like, okay, for the worm, couldn't you just tell somebody on death row about the worm and then bam, everything's fixed, right? That's not how it works. The worm, once you know about the worm can come back to you at any point. Everybody who knows about the worm has to go. Once it moved on to somebody, it still knows about you. So once that person's gone, it'll come back to you. You can't just like tell somebody on death row, have them die, and then that we win, thing's over. It's not going to work that way. It will just come back to you. And then we talked a little bit about what Sparrow did too. We, the plan of how they were going to defeat the worm, which unfortunately did not pan out all that well. Yeah, Dagon 1954 says one rule when starting a massive fire: never be inside of the fire when you're starting. Yeah, that's a good rule. I would highly recommend that. The good thing about the worm, guys, is that there are millions of people who now have the worm, so it'll take him a while to get through everybody, but he'll come for you eventually. Eventually, the mist will come. All right, guys. I think we got pretty much everything done. I do. Oh, you know what I want to do? I just want to show you guys something before we end the stream. Just to talk about, my buddy Shane has this thing that he's making with Ross, one of our friends. And I just wanted to show you guys because I think it's a fun thing. They have a little thing. Pulling it up here, one sec. Okay, so they're making this thing they call premium fantasy. And so they make little silly, stupid cartoons, and they're really funny. Just they're going for really comedy. So obviously, Don't Come Alone After Dark is very serious, and this is more silly and having fun with stuff. But so they just started this thing. They have a couple episodes of Wizard and Champion, which is their thing that they're doing. You guys should really check this out and give them a like and a subscribe and a comment because it's really funny. Now, one thing I'll say, like going in, they had used initially some AI voice stuff. And I think ultimately they didn't like that. They didn't really have any choice. They were just screwing around and trying to get something. They've since decided they're not doing anything like that. They're hiring real voice actors, really doing cool stuff. But so they've already addressed that. So I think if you have any problem with some of the AI voice in some of it, particularly the pilot, they know that's kind of a little bit funky. So they're addressing that, and I think ultimately the stuff is super funny and it's so cool. They have a little Patreon that they've started, and they're it's just some really cool stuff, and I'd love to see them catch some traction because it's so freaking hilarious, guys. You gotta check this out. Go to Premium Fantasy, look up Wizard and Champion. You gotta watch this stuff. Dagon says real people wins over AI. Yeah, every time. That's the thing. Every time. And AI it just doesn't work. There's obviously in this context they were kind of having fun. They were just being silly. They weren't, taking it too seriously. But the Ross and Shane both agree that that's not the way to go. So don't give them any shit for it. All right, cool. So I think that's it. I think I'm going to call the stream here. I am going to do another stream fairly shortly. Maybe in a couple weeks, I'll do a little catch-up stream. We'll see how we do with the Devil's Rock. Hopefully, it keeps growing and people enjoy it. And Dino Dude says, real quick, where can I send fan art? I mean, my email is on the YouTube page. You can find it. Or you could just post I don't know, post a comment on one of the community posts. And Casual Vandal says, I'll always support people who acknowledge and try to recover from missteps instead of doubling down. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't like an intentional thing. They honestly, and once it was brought up to them, they were like, yeah, that kind of totally makes sense. So these are good guys who are just having fun. All right, guys. I'm gonna call it for here for now. It was so great hanging out with you guys. We're gonna do cool stuff. I know I was all over the place on this one. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I'm just screwing around doing a stream. I will be better next time. I promise. All right, here we go. Peace.